Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, whatever part of the world you're tuned in from. This is Funny Like a Clown Podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Wirth, March 9th, 2021, episode 101. We get over the big 100 mark, and I look forward to another 100. As always, today's episode is brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce. For the spicy, sweet, savory taste at game time, there's only one G Vegas, available at www.gvegas.webs.com. Go green, go natural, get it shipped right to your door. The pandemic, you don't want to go out in this era, so get your food shipped to your door. Watch the game. If you're a Boston guy, you watch the game. And on the phone, I have a Boston guy. He's a comedian who started out in Boston, worked his way up all the way. Now he's a headliner most of the local clubs in New England. Mark Riley, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dennis. It's awesome to be here, man. I've been looking forward to doing this.
I appreciate you making the call in, so we got to start somewhere. Let's start at the beginning. How'd you get started out in the comedy world?
Well, I didn't, I'll tell you what, I didn't grow up thinking I was going to be a comedian. I was a pretty quiet kid. And as a matter of fact, my high school and college friends, when they found out I was doing this for a living, they were like, "What?
Couldn't believe
You're a comedian?" But I got into it by a buddy of mine. When I was refereeing pro hockey, a buddy of mine who I was traveling with just kept hounding me because he thought I was that funny. And I kept saying, "I'm funny with you guys, but not on stage."
Right.
So he took me to a club one night after a game we did in Richmond, Virginia, and between watching the comedians and interacting a little bit, which I look back on now and realize I was a real jerk that night
Okay.
to the comedians, but it made me realize I was funnier than them and they were making a living at it. So I came home, and the following Wednesday, that was a Saturday night. That Wednesday night, I went on stage at Nick's.
So you did pretty good your first night then? You had some amount of success, yeah?
Yeah, first night, it was funny. I went to Nick's, and it was like, there was really no one there. It was like a holiday party. It was right before Christmas. And I kind of was like, geez, this kind of stinks, you know? And I went back the following week, and the place was packed. And Kevin Knox was the host, who was, still is one of my favorite people.
God rest his soul, comedy legend in Boston.
Yeah, and so and he brought me up, and I was hooked. It was, it went great, and from there, 3 months later, I got my first paying gig from Mike Clark, and went from there.
So was it all smooth sailing, or did you have any rough nights along the way?
Oh, I bombed plenty of times.
Yeah, because a lot of comics don't get that. They think, they're going to start out and funny at home. They don't realize there's a hump you got to get over, right?
Oh, yeah. And what I did in the beginning, I got in with, his name was Jay Conley, who was the manager at Nick's, and I got in with Dick Doherty over at the Vault, and every time I'd go up as much as I could, and every time I tried new stuff. I kind of was older when I found this and had a lot of life experience and a lot of stories and that I thought were funny. And so I came into it with more material than, most new people, but I still had to try it out. And there were nights where I'd try out all new stuff and, maybe 2 minutes out of a 10-minute set would be good.
Well, they say the real stuff life is more funny than anything you can make up, right? That's like, the real life stuff's funnier than anything you can make up in a joke, ain't it?
Oh, well, everyone asks me, how do you write jokes? And I'm like, I don't write jokes. I just pay attention. And when stuff happens and I think it's funny, I tell the story. And, sometimes it works right away. Sometimes you got to tweak it or cut something out or add something. But, yeah, I find that real life is much more funny than anything I can write with a punchline.
Right. All right, so Mike Clark gave you your first paid gig, and you were going from there. I mean, what would you consider was your big break, where you thought, this kind of turned the corner for me, where I went from small time to the big time?
I think there was a couple of kind of milestones, I think. So that first paying gig was up in Maine, and it was with Paul Nardizzi and Gary Goldman. And Gary and I drove up to Maine together. And at the time, it was right before he kind of exploded and did Montreal and the whole thing. So And so that was really cool to, everyone was telling me, oh, you'll have to work free for 2-3 years,
Oh, yeah.
and I guess I got lucky, and got that paying gig right away. And Mike started using me, pretty regularly. And I think the first time he headlined me was kind of like one of those moments where you're like, all right, cool. But there was a couple times along the way where you'd be doing a benefit. I remember doing a benefit for Kevin Knox at Giggles one night, and Bill Burr came up from New York. And of course, I'm supposed to go next, and Mike says, Bill's going to go on, and then you.
Thanks, yeah.
Great.
Got no problem following that, right?
But it had happened before with Steve Sweeney. Steve would walk in and be like, I'm going on next, and you're like, okay, now I got to follow Sweeney. And I always approached it that you either rode the wave and swam, or you went up defeated and sunk.
Yeah.
And I always went up and just said, you know what? I always thought Mike wouldn't put me in this position if he didn't think I could handle it.
Yeah, it had to push you to do better, right? I mean, something like that, you got to bring your A game.
So, I was able to, I actually went up and, and just rode the wave Bill Burr created. And, I'm a high energy guy anyway, so, it's easy to, when someone brings the room up, to jump on and just keep riding it.
Right.
And it was awesome. So, those kind of nights were like, all right, I belong. I mean, I think the weekend that really did it for me was, I had been doing comedy a couple of years, and my daughter, I had a weekend at Nick's Comedy Stop, and John Panette was the headliner, and Kevin Knox was the other comedian. And John Panette was doing Boston and then going up to Kowloon. So he has to go first. So Kevin Knoxy hosts and goes up and crushes for 20 minutes and brings Panette up. He goes up and crushes for 40 minutes. Kev goes back up and crushes for another 10, and then brings me up.
The audience is tired, and here's Mark, right?
Exactly. It was like, here's the last guy who you don't know. Right. And who's done pretty much nothing.
Well, it's part of paying your dues, I guess, right?
Well, that Friday night, man, I went up in flames. It was, one of the worst nights on stage for me. And I was pretty bummed going home that night. And the next day, my third child, my daughter, was born. That afternoon, Saturday afternoon.
Right.
And I left the hospital, went home and showered, and went into Nick's. And with a whole new attitude.
Well, pumped you right up, I guess, huh?
My kid, I had another daughter. She was healthy. Mom was healthy. And, I was flying on a cloud. So I went in and I said to Nazi, I don't care what happens tonight. I got another beautiful kid.
You're the happiest guy in the world already, right?
Yeah. And I said to him, I'm opening with 10 new minutes of childbirth material.
How did it go?
And in Nazi's, perfect fashion, he's like, yeah, you do that, yeah. And so the same thing. Nazi crushes Panette. He didn't crush as good Saturday night as he did Friday night, but John Panette,
Yeah. How do you follow John? Yeah.
Yeah, and Nazi goes up, and I went up and without a care in the world, and I blew it apart.
Yeah, just be you. That's half the trick of comedy, yeah.
Yeah. It was, and I went home that night going, all right, yeah, I should be doing this.
Right.
And it also taught me a lesson on what kind of attitude you have to bring to the stage. And it's like anything, the attitude you bring towards life. If you go up thinking you're not going to do well.
Sometimes you try too hard. When you finally say the hell with it, I don't care what happens, that's when you start loosening up and getting laughs, yeah.
Yeah, and so you go up, basically, like my approach now is I'm going up to have fun and connect with people and bring them on a journey, which is, giving them a glimpse into my world. And if they want to come along, that's awesome.
Yeah.
If they don't, well then, it's nobody's fault. I have to look at what I'm doing, and maybe it's the material I'm doing, maybe it's that they don't maybe it's just that they're tired. Maybe it's that I'm not on my game and I got to step it up.
Yeah, every show's different. If every show was the same, every crowd was the same, wouldn't be no fun. That's half the fun. Every crowd's different, right?
Absolutely. And I love interacting with the crowd. And so
crowd work,
I go up with something in mind.
Yeah.
But sometimes it takes a right turn on me, and I end up doing a bunch of crowd work instead of material, or a mix of both. And but I like that because people, come see you again. They're not seeing the exact same show.
Same show, right?
Like us comedians, we're like, if someone comes to see us a second time, I know a lot of us are like, oh my God, I got to do all new material.
Yeah, they've already heard it. It's tough.
They're not going to laugh, which is completely not true.
Well, you've conquered it. I mean, you're playing your headline in most of the major rooms in New England, but I mean, you get in with Mike Clark, you said. He's one of the major bookers, but I mean, there's times if you work this room, you can't work that one. If you work for this guy, you can't work that guy. Comedy's a really competitive business. Why do you think it's so competitive?
I think it's just, like any other business. Everyone wants to be on top. The cool thing about Boston is, and I've been told this, not only experiencing it, but from people outside of Boston or going to New York and talking with comics from there or LA, it's kind of like a more close community here. So, like when Jimmy Dunn got the McCarthys, there was, I couldn't find too many people that weren't thrilled for him and happy for him,
right,
and loved the fact that he had made it. And
one of us made it out. There we go. We're happy for you, right?
Yeah. And so I think that's, it is competitive, and we all want to be the top dog, but at the same time, there's a lot of guys and girls, in this area in Boston that are just good people. Yeah. And you just want them to do well.
You got a couple knuckleheads out there, though. I mean, they ruin it for everybody, but I mean, for the most part, it's good. But
for the most part, yeah. Well, there's in every crowd, there's there's a few that if you met them under different circumstances, you might sucker punch them. But
right,
it's, for the most part, everyone most everyone is kind of got the right attitude.
Got a respect for
everybody. At the same time, with that said, I want to close every show.
Right.
Am I going to? No. And for various reasons. But, obviously I want to be the funniest on every show. That's just, because that's the way you build a fan base. That's the way you get more work. That's the way you make more money. It's
a competitive nature,
it's
right?
like any other business.
All right, so now I know you're able to work clean or you're able to work dirty. I mean, you can do a family show or an R-rated show, and you said you draw the line on an X-rated show. You won't go there, but when you get booked, do you ask before you go on, do you want me to work clean or dirty, or how do you make that decision?
I usually try to find out, you ask, like, what kind of material is off limits? Like, I made the mistake a long time ago not asking, and, found out the hard way that you got to know who's kind of in the audience. So if you're doing a benefit for someone and a certain something happens, say someone, got arrested for drunk driving, you don't want to do a drunk driving joke, or worse, whatever. So I always ask, hey, is anything off limits?
Mm-hmm.
And that way I know ahead of time, if they say, hey, no jokes about, drugs. Okay. No jokes about this. Or, like, so-and-so, this happened to them, so don't talk about that. That way, the last thing, I want everyone to have fun. I want everyone to laugh. I want everyone to feel good. The last thing I want to do is say something to upset someone.
Right, but I mean, they say if you work clean, you always work. And, we grew up, the Eddie Murphys are big, the Sam Kinnisons, the Andrew Dice Clays. I mean, you have a lot of fun doing that, but it's not always the big payday. But have you ever been doing clean material and been, like, eating it and say, hey, I got to do something different here and, try some dirty material, to try and change the pace, or?
I'd be lying if I said no.
Okay.
I remember one high school show I did, a graduation kind of show.
Right.
We were told, no swearing.
Yeah.
And, one of the kids that, he thought thought he was the funniest kid in the school, and he wanted to challenge the comedian.
Of course.
And finally, I was just like, you know, I don't know if I can swear on this.
Yeah,
but,
fine.
You know, I was like, fuck this, and I just, you know, I ripped him up and down and made him wave the white flag.
Right.
And, you know, I even turned to the principal. I'm like, I know I wasn't supposed to swear, but what am I supposed to do? And he even said, oh, let it rip. So,
he probably had enough of the kid too, not just you, right?
Exactly. He wanted me to do it.
Right.
So, but you know, you kind of, there's certain places, you know, you like if I look out and see, you know, an older crowd, well, you know, I'm not going to change who I am, but I will change, you know, some language, or, you know, the last thing you want to do is pigeonhole yourself.
Well, that's called reading the crowd. I learned that coming up. I watched all the headliners. I watched them. The second they get there, they'd walk around the room, and I could see scoping out the crowd like they wanted to see their audience, who they're playing to.
Oh, always. I do that in every show, especially if it's like one of those shows in an Elks Hall or, you know, in a gymnasium or some type of hall. I always try to pick out stuff that is unusual or kind of funny to me, and I'll point it out on stage, because the people, that's, you know, they're comfortable, they know the building, so they might not have ever realized that, you know, like a trough in the men's room is kind of ridiculous.
Right.
And so you point that out, and it ingratiates you with them, and you do it in a way that you're not, you know, some people are going to get upset with what you say. It's just the nature of the times right now. But you can't, I don't think you can worry about that, in the sense that, yeah, you don't want to say anything that's over the line, you know, but at the same time, our job is to be funny.
It's getting harder, though, ain't it? We're in a day and age where everybody's offended by everything. You can't barely say anything anymore, can you?
It's tough, and it's tough because you could have an audience of 200 people, and one person gets offended, and now everyone's expected to change.
Right.
And it's just like that in society. If one person complains about whatever it is, a Christmas tree in the lobby, all of a sudden we can't have a Christmas tree when, you know, the thousands of other people that look at it every day from every race, religion, and color don't have a problem with it. And I actually had a woman a couple of years ago say to me, it was a benefit, I was doing a soccer benefit, and I was hosting it. I had put on the show, and a woman got offended by what one of the comedians said, and after the show, she came up and she was, you know, complaining about it. And I said, listen, our job is to make everyone laugh. And she said, no, your job is to make sure no one's offended. And I said, you're the problem with the world today.
Wow, she said
and
that
she
to you,
like,
damn.
What do you mean by that? And I said, we're comedians. Our job is, that's like saying, you know, I go in as a plumber, and my job's to fix the pipes, and you expect me to fix the light socket too. No.
Yeah.
We have a job. And if you don't like it, then you don't have to go.
That's on you, that's on them, not you, right? Yeah.
And I say, if you go to a comedy show and you get it, knowing you're going to get offended, knowing you're sensitive,
right.
You know, and you go there and you're surprised that you're offended, that's like going to a horror movie and getting pissed off that it scared you.
Right, yeah.
There's no logic there.
Yeah, why are you here to begin with?
You know, so it is getting tougher. And, you know, obviously we evolve as a society, and certain things aren't acceptable that were acceptable 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
Sure.
You know, words and whatnot. But, and I get that, you know, and I get that you have to kind of, we want to work, and if we want to work and make money, then we got to kind of cater a little bit to the audience. But at the same time, we can't be so cautious that we're not funny anymore.
Right. Well, I seen what? They just, Pepe Le Pew, they're pulling him from Warner Brothers because they say he's promoting rape. I saw Mr. Potato Head's going to be gender-neutral Potato Head. The Muppets are on HBO. They're deemed as offensive material before you can watch it. I mean, where does it stop? I mean,
it's out of control. I honestly think that, you know, when you really think about it, like I brought this up the other day talking to someone. Remember the Teletubbies, when the big thing was the purple one was gay.
Right.
And there was some senator or something that wanted to ban him or something. And
issue, right?
These characters aren't even real. They're not even real people. And you think a kid at 3 years old is going to sit there and question this purple Teletubby? No, it's entertaining to them. Just like Mr. Potato Head. You know, it's a toy. It's not even real. It's just a toy. And, you know, I know back in the day, I used to put the lipstick on Mr. Potato Head for Mrs. Potato Head. What's the big deal?
Yeah, it's interchangeable parts.
Who cares?
You're in a no-win situation, babe. No matter what you do, somebody's going to be offended. It's a no-win situation, basically.
Nowadays it is. Nowadays it is. And, you know, you look at Pepe Le Pew, you know, and I think I'm not the only comedian. I don't know, a few years back, I did a whole thing on it. And I'm not the only comedian to do a joke about Pepe Le Pew.
Right.
You know, and he's chasing a cat. And he's just this, you know, like the idea of the joke isn't what people are taking it as now.
Yeah.
You know, like the whole Dr. Seuss thing, both sides lost their mind. The people that wanted to cancel him and the people that thought he shouldn't be canceled. And if both sides looked at really what the facts were, there were 6 books they wanted to get rid of. And all 6 books did have, you know, cartoons in them that they were okay at the time, but now we've evolved and we don't need them anymore. So it's like they're not trying to cancel all of Dr. Seuss. And the guy at one point said, you know what? I'm looking back. Some of these things I shouldn't have put in these books.
Right.
You know, he evolved too, but most of his books aren't a problem.
We're good, right?
And no one's trying to take them off the shelves. It was just these 6 books, but you know, everyone loses their mind.
Yeah, I grew up watching Elmer Fudd, and I never shot anybody, so I don't know.
You know, I remember Tom and Jerry and the Three Stooges, and you know, I don't know. It's a different
world we live in. Right? Yeah. So, what would you consider? What's your home base in comedy? Do you got a home base somewhere, or?
I guess I play giggles more than anywhere.
Okay, so you your home base.
You know, so that's, you know, but I mean, pre-COVID, obviously, you know, I try to work for everyone and anyone.
Okay. Now, have you ever done the road? I know you're around in New England a lot. Have you ever been on the road or no?
I haven't been on the road in the sense of going out for 2-3 weeks at a time. You know, I owned a business for a while. My kids were young. And I also, you know, I still teach during the day. I'm a 4th and 5th grade teacher. And so it never really made sense for me to go out on the road because it wasn't like I was going to make more money on the road. I might do more shows, but, you know, I worked plenty in and around New England. Now, I went to Vegas 3 times. I went down and to South Carolina, to Charleston one time, went out, you know.
So you get out every now and then.
Around.
Right.
Yeah, but I've never gone out on the road, quote, just because I spent about 5 years on the road when I was refereeing hockey.
Right.
And it gets old, you know, especially if you have a family and
sure, that's tough to get a family.
And you need health insurance.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned being a teacher. Now, that interests me because I got a friend who's a comedian and a teacher, and he put some stuff on YouTube, and some of the kids found it, and he had to hurry up and delete it because, I mean, being a teacher, you're expected to set an example for these kids. Have you ever had a problem with anybody finding your material, being a teacher, offensive, or?
Well, it's funny you say that. I have some stuff out there on YouTube, but I make sure that the stuff I put out there is not anything that I wouldn't want my students seeing.
Okay, so you're careful about what you do put out, right?
I'm careful, and even any social media stuff I put out, you know, I try to, because, you know, 5th graders, they Google you.
Oh,
you
sure,
know,
yeah, you got to set an example.
You have a website, and there's pictures of you on Google.
Now, you could be fired for stuff deemed offensive, right? Because, I mean, you're supposed to be setting an example with the kids, right?
Yeah, and you know, I don't, like, I really like to think, and you know, that none of my material is, you know, mean or
that
offensive.
Bad, right?
Yeah, it's not that I want them seeing, you know, some of the bits.
Well, even just saying a curse word could get you, you know, I mean, somebody.
Yeah, and almost all the stuff out there, I have clean material out there, because if someone sees it and wants to hire me, I'd rather them see me work clean and tell me I can work dirty than see a dirty tape and go, oh, this guy can't work clean.
Yeah, we don't want him.
Yeah, so I'm not upset about it, because it's like I'd rather have the clean stuff out there. But it's funny. One time a student did come in and was actually my daughter's classmate when they were in 5th grade, and I was her teacher. I was my daughter's teacher. And one of her good friends came in one day, and I have a video out there about not only learning 4 sentences in Spanish after 6 years, you know, and one of them is mi burro está en mis pantalones, and so my donkey is in my pants. And it's ridiculous.
Right.
But the girl came in and said, Mr. Riley, I watched some stuff online last night. I'm just wondering, is your donkey still in your pants?
He got you. All right, he got you.
And I was like, thank God I know your parents really well.
Yeah, that's the world we live in right there. Anybody can Google anything about you they want, right?
Yeah.
All right, so coming up, who were your favorite comedians? I mean, who did you enjoy watching before you did comedy? Anybody inspire you, some of the mainstream comics?
Yeah, I mean, I always loved Robin Williams.
Genius, yeah.
His ability to improv was insane. I love Buddy Hackett.
Legend.
You know, no better storyteller than him.
Right.
Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy. You know, they were. You know, I could watch their specials 1,000 times.
Right.
And you know, my all-time favorite comedian is Don Gavin.
The Godfather.
Yeah, he to me is the funniest person alive, and I could watch him 100 times, and I'd be falling off my chair 100 times.
He was a school teacher too. It must be something in school teachers. Comedy runs in school teachers' veins or something. I don't know.
Well, I think, you know, honestly, I don't think they're all that different, in the sense that you have to keep a group of people's attention, and you have to entertain them. And, you know, in the student's case, the entertaining leads to education. And in a lot of ways, kind of a lot of what we do, you know, maybe someone will learn something, maybe even if it's not taking themselves too seriously.
Right.
You know, so they're both similar in ways that unless you really think about it, you don't realize.
Laughter is the best medicine. It's therapy, so yeah, sure. So you mentioned Kevin Knox. I mean, is there somebody who really mentored you doing comedy that kind of took you under your wing as a young comic and showed you the way through the comedy business?
Don Gavin,
okay.
for sure. He helped me out immensely. Kevin Knox was someone that you know, definitely was there in the very beginning. You know, and there were other guys along the way, Tony V, Jimmy Dunn, you know, were always ready to help. You know, I mean, there was so many good ones in Boston that
a lot of good comics in Boston, yeah. But I mean, if you work hard, they recognize you work hard because they remember what it's like them coming up, you know.
Yeah. I mean, everyone started at some point, and you know, I think the good ones, especially the ones around here, remember when they first started, and they don't, you know, they don't think they, you know, woke up on third and hit a triple. They realize how much they had to work to hit that triple, and you know, so they see younger comics and they try to give back a little bit.
Well, it's almost a responsibility, isn't it? I mean, somebody had to give back to you. Now that you're a headliner, it's kind of a responsibility to you to give back. I mean, any young comics you see out there you want to give a shout out to that you like direct?
Well, I mean, he's not so young, but Will Noonan is one of my favorites.
I ask this question regularly. His name has popped up more than any other Boston comic, Wills.
Yeah, he's just a great guy, and I worked with him one of his first shows, and he, you know, the amount of growth as a comic and as a performer and entertainer that I've seen over the years has just been awesome to watch. I saw the same thing happen with Greg Murphy. You know, another one that kind of fell into the business and was raw, and now is just such a polished comic, and is just an incredible entertainer. They're not young.
Yeah, tough. There's a lot of talent in Boston for sure. Yeah, right. I know, Bill. Well, from what I heard about you is you're really good with the hecklers. You can eat a heckler alive, is what I've heard about you. But I mean, some nights in comedy are better than others. Some nights you hit the drunks, you hit the hecklers. You get any crazy story? What's like the craziest thing ever happened to you on stage?
Well, yeah, it is something that I kind of, I guess I don't want them, but when they show up,
you're ready.
I love torturing them.
Right.
One night at Giggles, there was a group of people there celebrating a birthday. They drove up to Sawdust in a bus from New Bedford, and they were all banged up, and it was the woman's birthday, and I happened to, Paul Gilligan was the headliner, and I did the first show and had to run to Braintree to do another show, and then came back. So Gilly hosted the second show, so I kind of closed the second show. So by the time I get up there on stage, these people were a mess. And I'm up on stage for 2 seconds, and the woman gets up, walks around the table, and starts talking like it's a wedding. So, of course, I don't ignore this.
Right.
And so, we're back and forth, and then, they just kept interrupting, and finally, I think I brought up Dunkin' Donuts, and in the middle of it, she yells, "I love Dunkin' Donuts!" And I said, I do too, ma'am. You know why? Because when I'm talking, they shut the fuck up and listen.
How did she respond to that? Did she shut up, or did she go at you harder?
Her husband, all of a sudden, is standing in front of me.
Oh, boy.
And he says, "You're done." And I was like, "Excuse me?" And he goes, "You're done." I said, "No, I don't think I am." And he goes, "No, you're done. You don't talk to my wife like that."
Oh,
and he gets up on stage. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I keep saying, "Don't make me hit you. I really don't want to hit you, sir. Don't make me hit you." And he was drunk, and I haven't drank in over 15 and a half years, so this wasn't that long ago. And luckily, and I kept just saying, "Don't make me hit you." And the crowd is like, doesn't know what's going on.
So nobody at the club was trying to put a stop to this, no?
Well, what's funny is that weekend, Mike wasn't there.
Oh, okay.
He was away.
Yeah.
So Gilly came out and, took the guy off stage, and
calmed him down.
then the guy's son said, "You're done." And I'm like, "You gotta be his son." And so I ripped on him, and like half the table left, and I finished the set, and they, the people that were with the party that weren't completely annihilated came up and were apologizing, and
right.
They never liked this, but it was just kind of funny because I really thought, in my mind, I'm going, if I hit this guy and he falls and hits his head, and then
now you got bigger problems
going through my head.
Yeah. They had the beer muscles on that. Everybody got the beer muscles when they want to be a part of the show. Yeah.
Yep.
All
yep.
right.
But I guess that was probably the craziest.
The one you remember most, yeah.
There was a guy that wouldn't stop in New Hampshire, and he had thrown money at the comedian before me, and just like a complete jerk.
Yeah.
And I had a girl that was at a bachelorette party come up and tuck a $1 bill in my jeans. That was interesting.
There you go. Yeah. Well, everybody thinks it's all fun times. They don't realize that you got to deal with drunks sometimes. That's part of the game,
It's brutal, and I think it's tough because you don't, like, I've snapped on stage,
yeah.
And you don't want to, but sometimes when people just don't get it, and you're at a place where there's not like a bouncer or a room manager
it's
that
up to you,
tell them
right.
to leave,
yeah.
or a benefit where you don't know if the guy that's being the jerk just wrote a check for $5,000,
right.
and you're gonna attack the guy that is the biggest supporter. Like,
right.
your hands are kind of tied sometimes, and but other times, I've just said, forget it.
Yeah, enough's enough, right? Yeah, after a while, enough's enough. It's time, right? I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get off of comedy for a second here. Going way back, I guess, maybe before comedy, you were an ice hockey referee, and you had a week in the NHL before you got fired? What happened there that you got fired after a week?
Yeah, I worked, I did East Coast League, which was, minor pro hockey, and I did major junior hockey for about 5 years, and the NHL called and hired me, and then
wow.
1 week later, Thursday to Thursday, they called me and fired me.
What was the reason?
They didn't say this, but I'm pretty sure it's because I'm American, and they had hired their quota of Americans. That was back in the day when there was only one referee and 2 linesmen.
Okay.
So there was only 3 of us, not 4 of us on the ice like now. And, they try to give me every reason in the book as to why, but there really was no good reason.
Other than you weren't Canadian.
Yeah. And so I did one Bruins preseason game, and that was it. I really hadn't, it was, in hindsight, it was the best thing that happened because I never would have gone on stage. I actually had
one door closes, another opens.
Before this.
You had what?
I had started doing comedy before.
Oh, before that? Okay.
And I don't think they liked that either.
Right.
They made a kind of a comment about that, that being a comedian kind of wasn't, I had original thought, and they didn't really like that. So,
all right.
Yeah, but, it is what it is. It's part of the journey, and, I'm back I do college and junior and work with a bunch of young guys now and help them figure out the game and how to do it, and I'm having a blast with it.
All right, so I don't know if you got a comedy routine about it, but it must have left an impression on you because it says you co-authored a movie script called Penalty Box, so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I have a bunch of material about hockey for sure.
Okay.
And a buddy of mine who's a screenwriter I met at the Parks and Rec department, I told him about this idea of making writing a movie, and so over the course of a bunch of years we got together, and so it's a story about a few referees. It happens in the East Coast League, which is the same league as Slapshot, the movie Slapshot.
Okay.
And the best way to describe it is it's kind of like Slapshot, but only from the referee's perspective. It gives you insight into the world of the referees.
Kind of what you experienced, right?
Yeah, and it's hilarious. I mean, the stories, you can't make some of the stuff up. It's just so funny.
So have you ever pitched it to anybody, or got any response on it, or?
Not as much as I'd like. It's tough because hockey movies are what they are. We've worked a lot with a guy by the name of Mike Cerrone, who is one of the writers for the Farrelly Brothers. He's helped us out quite a bit, but we just haven't been able to get it in the right person's hands. And I keep hoping it'll happen at some point. But I'm proud of it because it is a solid script, and those who have read it have liked it.
Yeah, you keep trying and hope you catch lightning in a bottle. It's not easy to catch lightning in a bottle, but the more you try, the more chances you get, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's unique, it's new, it's fresh. It's not, Hollywood just redoes stuff now, and it'd be nice to get something fresh out there and new, and this, it's a unique perspective, and, hockey movies are kind of cultish in the sense that they, not necessarily appeal to the general public.
To everybody, right, yeah, it's kind of a cult following, right, yeah.
But you put the right person in the role, and who knows, so...
Sure.
So that's there, and I'm in the process of, I haven't published it yet, but I wrote a book called Not Every Kid Should Get a Trophy, The Age of Entitlement.
What's in the book? What's the book about?
Yeah, it's and I think that's half the reason why we have cancel culture now, because everyone's a winner, and in real life, life, not everyone's a winner. And, you know, as a society, we're not letting kids experience failure because we're afraid it's going to hurt them in some way, but I think it hurts them more telling them they're great at everything.
We grew a generation of pansies was what we ended up doing, I know.
Yeah.
Well, most of us were middle class. We grew up with nothing. We wanted our kids to have everything we didn't have, and by doing that, you know, we nurtured them too much.
Yeah, it's just too, you know, I'm a gym teacher here at school, and one thing, you know, I play, and I joke about it, but I play dodgeball with first graders. And you know what? They love it. And yeah, you know, I play with the squishy ball, not the balls we played with, you know, with breaking those.
The hard rubber balls, yeah.
You know, not the rubber ones that were pumped up too hard, but, you know, yeah, some of them take a ball in the face, but, you know, it's, you know, they're okay.
It mans you up a little bit.
And they learn a good lesson. It's like, pay attention.
Turn you into a man. Pay attention.
Yeah, so I think there's some benefit in the stuff that we've gotten rid of.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's sad, and it's creating a problem for society that it's going to come to a head at some point. And, you know, because people we're going to have a whole society of people that don't know how to deal with adversity, and don't know how to be told no, and don't know, you know, how to fail.
I said the words please and thank you have been, and you know, they replaced with you owe me and I'm entitled. That's the generation we live in right there, you know.
Yeah, and it's you know, and again, you know, I do the whole thing on it on stage, and more people afterwards come up and say, oh, I couldn't agree more, and, you know, and so it's like, you know, it's not the majority of people. It's, again, that small group, you know, that think they know better and think that they're helping their kids by shielding them from any, you know, diversity.
No,
and they're not.
They're not, no.
It's opposite.
Well, we're old school. So, we get that. These kids nowadays, they don't get it. It's a whole new generation. We're past our time, Mark.
Yep.
All right.
It's a whole, you know, I joke about the concussions. Concussions are serious injury. Don't get me wrong, but back in the day, you know, I'm sure I had a dozen of them, and I you know, it's like something's changed. You know, because we used to get the bell rung, and that was it. You know, so it's just a different world.
All right, so you've done a lot of television, also. I mean, I know you were on Dirty Water TV, and what are some of your television appearances?
Yeah, well, I did a bunch of those. I've had a few commercials out there. One was with Jimmy Dunn, the Olympia Sports ads. That was really fun to do. I did another one for a hardware store. I was on. I mean, I don't have any Letterman appearances yet, or.
Well, how did the commercials come about? Was just people you know got you on there?
But I say yet because I truly believe it'll happen at some point. But so yeah, I mean that's, you know, Steve Katzo's show. That was a lot of fun. You know, kind of more local.
Yeah, do the local stuff and hope it leads to something bigger. That's, you know, you got to start somewhere, you know. These kids today, they think they start at the top. They don't realize you got to work your way up there, you know. So I mean.
Yeah, and we see that with, you know, some young comics these days think, you know, I have an hour.
I'm a week in the business. I'm headlining.
Yeah, it's like, no, you're not. You know, I've always said my definition of a headliner is someone who can follow other headliners.
Right.
You know,
if you can carry the crowd. These kids think if they can talk for 45 minutes, they're a headliner. No, you got to carry the crowd for 45 minutes, not just talk. You know, big difference.
Oh yeah, and you should have to. You know, if you can follow someone who's a regular headliner, then you're considered a real headliner.
Okay.
If you're following, you know, you know, you got an open micer and an okay opener, and then you headline. You know what? You're the headliner on that show, but I wouldn't call myself a headliner. I didn't call myself a headliner or consider myself, quote, a headliner.
Right.
until I actually did shows where I had to follow other headliners.
Follow a quality act. Yeah, if you follow a shitty act, then yeah, you're gonna get laughs. So don't make it good. It just means the guy before you sucked, right?
Exactly. Well, yeah. I mean, it's and I mean, I was someone that I loved the challenge. Like that night following Sweeney, and that night following, having to go up after Bill Burr. It's like holy shit. And so. It wasn't, I'll be honest with you, I'll host a show, I'll middle a show, I'll headline a show. You know what, as long as I'm on stage and making people laugh, that's what's important to me. I'm not the type of guy that, I won't work unless I'm getting this much money and I'm closing. That doesn't fly with me.
As long as you're doing what you love to do, right, I get you.
Exactly.
So,
I mean, obviously you want to close every show and you want to make the most money you can make. But,
yeah. Everybody wants to headline, but don't let that define you in the business either, yeah.
Exactly. So, you are what you are on the show and you have fun with it. And one thing I learned, and I learned this from Kevin Knox, the better you are at hosting, the more work you can get.
Oh, sure.
Because, hosting is an art form, and not everyone's comfortable doing it. And, I try to emulate myself after him in that he could host, he could headline, he could do it all. And I realized, you become a good host, you make yourself versatile, and you get, you get put on shows that you might not have got put on because the guy knows you can host.
Yeah, hey. Hosting works better than no work, right?
You know what? And the host, like as a host, I think I get to know the audience more, and I connect more. And so, and this is another thing Kevin said to me one time. He said, "Listen, you might be opening, or be the opener or the host, but all 200-300 people that came see a headliner are also going to get to see you.
Sure.
So that's how you build a fan base." And so the more you connect, the more people want to come back and see you. So, so that was something that I always, and I kind of pride myself in the fact that I can, you put me anywhere in a show and I'll be happy doing it.
Okay. So back in 2016, you were a finalist in the Boston Comedy Festival. I mean, did you do a lot of festivals, or what was that experience like for you?
No, that was pretty cool. I had done the first couple of years of the comedy festival. I did. The first year, I got knocked out right away, and I'll never forget. It was at Dick Doherty's and club, the Old Vault, and I was on death's door with some type of flu, and I had no business even being on stage, let alone advancing. The next year, I did a show at my preliminary was at Nick's. And that was kind of my home club at the time. That's where I started. I was always there. And, I crushed. And I didn't move on. And I said, you know what? I'm done with contests. Because, they're really in the eyes of the judge. And if the judge doesn't like one thing, the funniest person isn't necessarily moving on. So I didn't do a contest till 2016.
I had done one in Rhode Island, and it's like, I thought I had the better set, and the guy from Rhode Island ended up winning, because he was from Rhode Island, I was from Mass, and I literally had the crowd stopping me on the way out. They're like, half the crowd, you got robbed, you should have won. Like, well, the crowd liked me anyway. I mean, they thought I should have won, but the judges, they were from Rhode Island, they were picking the Rhode Island guy. That's the way it was,
Yep, and that's exactly what I experienced. Even the two kids that moved on that night, one was a kid from Chicago. And he was like, dude, I got no business moving on if you're not.
Right.
He was like, you were head and shoulders above everyone. So I just didn't do them because, I don't know. And then 2016, I don't know why, I entered the contest and the stars aligned and I had some great sets and was hitting my stride. And in the final, I had all 10 comedians were awesome. And I had a great set, and a kid out of New York, Rob Ryan, I think his name was Robbie Ryan, he had a great set too, and it basically came down to him and I. Two of the judges said they had me first, and the other two had him first, and it came down to 1 point difference.
The tiebreaker that close, yeah, wow.
But it was an awesome run, and I had a blast with it. And the following year, I went back in it again, and I think I advanced to the second round and then got knocked out, and said, you know what, I don't need to do contests to prove to myself I'm funny. And I joked, first place in the Boston Comedy Festival got 10,000. Second place, didn't get anything.
There you go. So, well, when young comics ask me about comedy contests, I saw an interview with Eddie Murphy one time. He said he took last place in every comedy contest he was ever in, and look what Eddie Murphy went on to do. So don't let it judge you, let contest judge you,
Well, yeah, and the other thing with contests, you get 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's tough for guys who've been doing it a long time. Like for me, I have a couple of stories that are 6, 7, 8 minutes long.
Yeah.
And so to kind of if I had a 5 or 8 minute set I did all the time, yeah, I'm going to do great in that contest because, my act is built for it. But then, someone tells you to do 20 minutes and you're great for 8 and you suck for 12. Yeah. It's okay, so, I mean, they do serve a purpose, and I get it, but I'm too old.
Yeah, it gets you seen. I mean, the people running the contest, even if you lose, they get to see your act. I mean, I know comics have gotten work out of a comedy contest even though they lost, so, I mean, it gets you seen, yeah. So, all right, you're headlining, you're doing good for yourself, things are rocking and rolling for you, boom, this pandemic hits. How's that affected your comedy?
It's been tough, financially mostly. Comedy makes up a good portion of my yearly income. So, for it to be chopped in, by 60, 70%, that's a kick. Yeah. But it was also, part of it is just getting up on stage and having that release, that creative release, that connection, that, that it's therapeutic, and that was tough. I mean, last summer when things were going on outside, I had a great August. I had I think I did 14 shows. Did
you do the parking lot shows where they're sitting in cars and they beep their horns and stuff at you? Do one of those?
I did one of them, and it was 2 shows in one night, and that was interesting because it's like you tell a joke and you're waiting for the laugh.
What's the response?
And you're all right, where is it? And then people start beeping, and you're
oh, all right.
Okay, that's weird.
Have you done any of the online shows, or is the online stuff not for you?
I've done some, and I'll tell you what, from the first, I did one back in April, right after the shutdown, and it was, it was miserable for me personally because I was on Spotlight, so it was just my face that I was looking at. So I'm telling my jokes to my face, and I'm not hearing any response. And it was, I was like, I'll never do this again.
Different
but
times.
then I've done, I have one actually Thursday night. I'm doing one, and you kind of figure it out and you adapt, and I don't mind them now.
It's better than nothing, right? That's the alternative is nothing, so I guess it's better than nothing, right?
Exactly. And but things, hopefully you're going to start opening up, and I did a show up in New Hampshire last weekend, which was great, and I have been able to use the time to kind of, I don't want to say get creative because I've always been creative, but kind of sit down and, I've actually did some writing, and I've written a couple of things that I've tried out now, and they're...
you got more time to express your creativity, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
And I also, through the inspiration of Jimmy Dunn, I started writing another book, and it's all about hockey, and it's called I Ref Your Kids, Why Your Kid is Not Going to the NHL,
Okay.
And you know, it's a comedy book.
Right.
And so that kind of gave me the inspiration to start that. So that's in the you know, it's a fetus right
Beginning
now.
stages.
It's in the very early stages.
Okay.
But you know, it is like I'm someone that tries to accept things as they are, and you know, I'm a big believer in the universe as it should be, and so this whole thing happened for whatever reason. And
they say that comedy always survives, so there's going to be a point in time when we get back to things are normal again. We're able to do things we love to do again. I mean, when that time comes, what's in the future for Mark Riley? What do you want to accomplish before it's all said and done? What do you want to look back and say, I did that? What's in your future?
I'd like to, you know, you know, get some type of late night credit. You know, do kind of you know, I'm drawing a blank on the late
Jimmy
night
Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, Stephen Colbert.
Yep.
One
of those, you know, I'd like to get out to LA when it opens up and just kind of kick around maybe for a trip.
See what happens.
Get down to New York a little more, you know, kind of just get some more exposure and see where this whole comedy journey takes me. You know, and I wouldn't mind getting more into acting and doing some more of that, and you know, just
keep doing what you love to do.
Keep plugging away.
Yeah, there you go. All right, well, we're getting on an hour here, and I thank you for calling in. So we'll leave it off on this. We got a lot of young comics that listen to the podcast, and I always say, listen to the advice of the people ahead of you. You made it. You're headlining all the big shows. So if you had to pass on what you learned, what advice would you have for the young comics coming up?
The biggest thing to do is keep your time and be on time. You know, I went through a stretch where I was kind of late for a few shows, and it cost me.
Yeah.
So, you know, be professional. You know, and do what you're supposed to do, and listen and watch. You know, I always watched. When I was opening, I always stayed and watched the whole show. And I watched the headliner, and I didn't watch, I love laughing, and I love comedy. So, you know, the entertainment piece was there. But I wanted to watch how they moved, how they handled hecklers, how they, you know, used pausing and facial expression, and all the things that go into being a great comic. And, you know, and talk to them. Like, you know, like I remember hanging out with Gav. I'll hang out with, you know, anyone and everyone, and just talk to them, and you know, be a sponge. And I notice now a lot of times young guys will come and they'll open, and then, you know, they leave to go do another guest set or do this or do that, and it's like, you know, staying after show and saying thank you to the people that are there. It's a way of building an audience. You know, and watching people do the craft that are really good at it helps you learn and become better.
Sure.
You know, so I mean, that's what I did. I watched, I listened, and I was professional. And, you know, and that's, you know, that's the way you and try to work for everyone. I know some people have problems with this one or that one or whatever, but I try to always position myself that, hey, listen, I'll work for anyone. And I'm not, you know, I'm not taking sides. I'm not, you know, I'll be loyal to the people that take care of me for sure, but I try to work for everyone and anyone.
You just want a gig. You just want to just get out there and do what you love to do. You don't care who it's for, right?
Yeah, and if someone offers you an opening spot and you think you're a middle act, you know, just go and be the best opening spot person that the person's ever seen. You know, do your best every time you go on, and don't get caught up in where you are on the show. You know, because that was a mistake I made early on. I got caught up in, am I featuring, am I opening, am I, you know, just go and be the best comic you can be, and be as funny as you can be, and, you know, people notice. You know, when other comics start saying, yeah, I don't like following that Riley kid, well, guess what? The Riley kid starts headlining. You know, that's how you do it. You know, yeah, so I mean that's
good advice. All right, can't go wrong there, man. That's how you move up right there. Be the whatever time you're given, you do the most with that time, no matter where it's at, and that'll move you up. Mark, thank you for calling in. I really do appreciate it.
Dennis, thanks for having me, man. This was a blast. I really appreciate it.
Good luck in the future. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Dennis. You too, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, comedian Mark Riley on the Boston comedy scene. And, hey, you want to know what it takes to be a comedian? There's some great advice for you right there. If they give you 1 minute, you make the most of that minute. They gave you 5 minutes, you make the most of the 5. They give you 10, and you just keep moving up. You make the best of every minute, and before you know it, you're a headliner doing 45. And, if they don't want to follow you, then they better put you on after them, and that's how you get to close shows right there. Be good at what you do. Don't think you know everything. Learn from the people ahead of you. Stick around. That's a big one. That was a good one. Stick around, man. I hate the people who show up, do their set, and then take off and think they're going to get better. Like, you're not George Carlin, okay? You're a local comic, all right? You want to support the show. That's a big one. This is Funny Like a Clown podcast. We do comedy. We're learning the ins and the outs, what it takes to make it in the business, and we got some of the biggest names in the business coming on here. Till next week, I'm Dennis Wirth. Keep laughing. Make somebody laugh. Laughter is the best medicine. And tell your friends to tune in the podcast, and they'll laugh too. Good night.